The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Weird. We have a different approach to what I'm sure a lot of people will assume is a love story, just because, like, we cast a guy in the movie. Andrew Burnap, great dude. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood.
RachelZegler just can't catch a break. And at this point, some are wondering if she might be her own worst enemy. After Snow White bombed at the box office, the controversy didn't end there. Now, fresh rumors are swirling that even her co-star Andrew Burnap is quietly placing blame, pointing fingers at Rachel for the film's epic collapse. And honestly, the behind-the-scenes drama is proving to be more entertaining than the movie itself. So buckle up, because today we're diving into how RachelZegler went from Disney's rising star to Hollywood's black sheep, and why insiders say Disney may be scrambling to cut ties.
I think this girl does not deserve a feature-length film.
You want to trash that legacy, that company that now Disney has screwed up the last 5 years trying to please a small percentage of minorities in America? Yeah, we're sick of it. So the more you do this, Disney, Zegler, whatever her name is, yes, this is exactly the backlash you're going to get from parents who have kids who are your customers. You're supposed to win parents over. You're talking to kids, the parents pay for the tickets. You have to be a dummy as a marketer. If I'm Bob Iger, you know what we're doing? Emergency meeting. We're putting Snow White on hold for 2 years, and guess what? Pay her a couple $1 million, go away. We're going to bring another person to play this role because you just screwed this thing up.
After a shocking opening week for Rachel's version of Snow White, some still held out hope. The thinking was maybe the numbers would pick up, maybe fans would show up for the nostalgia, the legacy, the Disney magic. But wow, were they wrong.
This went from bad to worse for Snow White, and it's shaping up to become one of the biggest bombs of all time.
In what's now being called a historic low for Disney, Snow White suffered a brutal 66% drop in ticket sales during its second week in theaters. To put that in perspective, that's worse than 2019's Dumbo, which already had its own rough ride. With this drop, RachelZegler's Snow White has officially earned the title of worst second-week performance of any Disney live-action remake ever.
Snow White remake is now one of the lowest-rated films in IMDb history. This is such a poor reception for a Disney princess movie, and I'll be surprised if it even has a 1-star tomorrow because the bad reviews keep pouring in by the second.
And as the film floundered, Rachel tried to rally. In what seemed like a last-ditch effort to boost interest, and possibly her own image, she hit the theaters herself to watch Snow White with a few friends. But what was meant to be a cute, supportive gesture quickly became something else entirely. One of her friends documented the whole thing on Instagram, cheering as Rachel's name came up on screen in a nearly empty theater. Clip quickly went viral, not for the film, but for the cringe. People started filming their own trips to see Snow White, and in almost every case, the theaters were just as empty.
Wow, people love me.
The trend took off, and not in a good way. Social media flooded with video after video of near-empty screenings and Disney execs. Well, let's just say the mood behind closed doors isn't exactly cheerful. According to unconfirmed reports, the studio is more than just disappointed. They're frustrated. And some insiders are even saying Rachel has already been quietly dropped by Disney.
Apparently RachelZegler is suing Disney Studios for wrongful termination and also discrimination. I literally don't understand what's going on. Rachel just needs to sit down. Like this says, rumor has it, RachelZegler might be suing Disney and others for canceling some of her Snow White press tour due to all the controversy. Bro, before the movie even came out, she was talking about how she wants to bring up the woman in this movie and how there's not going to be a prince. And so I understand, like, Disney saying, like, you did so much in this press tour that did not help us in any way and actually negatively affected our movie. So, I mean, honestly, it does kind of make sense.
This movie was supposed to be a major turning point, not just for Disney, but for several members of the cast. One of them was Andrew Burnap. Long before the controversy, there was real anticipation that Andrew would be a breakout star once Snow White hit theaters. And according to him, that was the dream from the start. In an interview with People magazine, he shared how the role came about. "I remember auditioning for it. I put something on tape and sent it off," he said. You train yourself to audition and then forget about it as quickly as possible. And then weeks later, I got an email saying they'd like to see you again. I said, "You've got to be kidding." Then they said I was going to do a chemistry read with RachelZegler. And the moment I got the call that I'd landed the role, I was outside, I sat down on the ground and thought, wow, my life is really going to change from here. And it did change, but not in the way Andrew had hoped. Even before the film wrapped production, RachelZegler had already begun making waves, and not in a good way. Many felt her public comments during the press tour were undermining the movie itself, including Andrew's character. There was a growing sense that Rachel saw herself as above the project, almost as if Snow White was beneath her. Nearly every time she was given a platform, she took the opportunity to criticize the original animated film and its characters, including the one played by Andrew. In one interview with Extra TV, Rachel referred to the prince, Andrew's role, as a weird stalker. She said, "A guy that literally stalks her? Weird." We have a different approach to what I'm sure a lot of people will assume is a love story just because we cast a guy in the movie. Andrew Burnap, great dude, but it's really not about the love story at all, which is really, really wonderful. Comment didn't sit well with audiences, and it certainly didn't help Andrew. Painted his role as irrelevant or outdated before the film even had a chance to be seen. And it gave the impression that Rachel wasn't just reinterpreting a classic, she was actively distancing herself from it. To many, it felt like she was chipping away at the very thing the film needed to succeed, its heart.
So no prince or a different kind of prince?
We have a different approach to what I'm sure a lot of people will assume is a love story just because, like, we cast a guy in the movie, right. Andrew Burnap, great dude. Yeah. It's one of those things that I think everyone's going to have their assumptions about what it's actually going to be, but it's really not about the love story at all, which is really, really wonderful. And whether or not she finds love along the way is anybody's guess until 2024. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood, baby.
RachelZegler's comments didn't just spark online backlash. They stirred up serious criticism from people deeply tied to Disney history. One particularly vocal critic was David Halehand, the son of David Hand, the supervising director of the original Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. He publicly stated that Zegler's remarks showed a lack of respect for the legacy his father and Walt Disney built nearly a century ago. The reaction was so intense that Disney reportedly pressured Rachel to walk back her comments. She eventually addressed the controversy in an interview with Variety, saying, "I would never want to box someone in and say if you want love then you can't work, or if you want to work then you can't have a family. That's not true, it's never been true. It can be very upsetting when things get taken out of context or jokes don't land. The love story is very integral. A lot of people wrote that we weren't doing that storyline anymore. That we were always doing that, it just wasn't what we were talking about on that day. But the damage had already been done. And it wasn't just Andrew Burnap's character that got caught in the crossfire. Behind the scenes, it was no secret that tensions were also high between Rachel and her co-star Gal Gadot. But unlike Andrew, Gal's issue with Rachel wasn't about the film's story, it was personal. In August 2024, Rachel posted a message on X, formerly Twitter, expressing support for Palestine. The post was made in conjunction with a promotional push for the Snow White trailer, an odd and jarring mix of politics and marketing that raised eyebrows across the board. It struck a nerve, particularly because Gal Gadot had previously served in the Israeli Defense Forces under the country's mandatory military service laws. She's been vocal about her support for Israel, especially during the ongoing Israel-Palestine conflict. Needless to say, Rachel's timing and messaging caused a storm behind the scenes. Disney executives were reportedly furious. Insiders say they were blowing up her phone, trying to manage the fallout. Things got so heated that producer Mark Platt flew to New York in person to speak with Rachel directly. At this point, Rachel's relationship with Disney leadership was deeply strained. For nearly 2 years, she'd been publicly criticizing aspects of the film, and while the studio had poured millions into production and marketing, they now found themselves stuck with a lead actress who seemed to be working against them. The political tweet caused ripple effects beyond PR. According to insiders, after Rachel's post, Gal Gadot began receiving disturbing threats due to her Israeli background, so serious that Disney had to bring in extra security for her. and insiders say Rachel didn't fully grasp the weight of what she'd done. One source said, she didn't understand the repercussions of her actions for the film, for Gal, for anyone. As tensions escalated, the relationship between the two women continued to unravel. Promotional events were awkward and sparse. When they did appear in public together, it was obvious they had little to no rapport. The Snow White premiere, they were rarely seen interacting. And for the European premiere in Spain, Gal didn't show up at all.
$70 million on the film, the studio opted for a small LA premiere, held Saturday in the middle of the day with limited press. Zegler greeted children dressed as Snow White. She was not at Disneyland on Sunday, where Gal Gadot promoted the film, surrounded by children dressed as her character, the evil.
Now, it didn't help that Rachel and Gal had virtually nothing in common. The age gap between them was significant. Gal is a mother of 4 and a seasoned actress, while Rachel is a rising star still finding her footing in the industry. The only real connection they had was this film, and even that turned into a disaster. A source who spoke to People magazine gave some insight into the dynamic between the two actresses. Gal is annoyed by the movie drama. She enjoyed filming and she was fine with Rachel, but they're not friends. They have nothing in common. They did a job together and that's it. Another insider added, Gal doesn't see eye to eye with Rachel. Her view is that if you sign on to a project, you don't criticize it or stir up controversy. She just doesn't understand Rachel's approach. But Gal wasn't the only one Rachel clashed with. In the midst of the film's promotional chaos, Rachel also picked a fight with an even bigger group, Donald Trump and his supporters. In a now infamous Instagram post, Rachel went off. She wrote, "May Trump supporters and Trump voters and Trump himself never know peace." And she didn't stop there. She launched into a full-blown rant calling Trump's base a deep, deep sickness, and accusing them of subscribing to a false sense of security, masculinity, intelligence, patriotism, and humanity. She ended the post with a bold, F*** Donald Trump. Naturally, the internet exploded. Trump supporters came after her in full force, demanding that Disney fire her from Snow White. Some even vowed to boycott the movie if she wasn't removed. At this point, Disney had hit their limit. She wasn't just clashing with co-stars anymore, she was alienating a large chunk of the potential audience. The studio reportedly sent Snow White producer Mark Platt to speak with her again, hoping to rein in the damage. After a series of tense conversations and a new PR strategy, Disney brought in a social media expert to help manage Rachel's online presence. That's when she posted a public apology. "Hi everyone! I would like to sincerely apologize for the election post I shared on my Instagram last week. I let my emotions get the best of me. Hatred and anger have caused us to move further and further away from peace and understanding, and I am sorry I contributed to the negative discourse. This week has been emotional for so many of us, but I firmly believe that everyone has the right to their opinion, even when it differs from my own. I am committed to contributing positively toward a better tomorrow." But for many, the damage was already done. Between alienating her co-stars, dividing audiences, and publicly criticizing the very project that was meant to launch her into superstardom, RachelZegler may have talked herself out of a career. So what do you think? Is there a path back for Rachel, or has she burned too many bridges? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to check out the next video.